So I tried. We only have a limited amount of time today, so I tried really hard to um, not go over too much of the basics for either Zoom or OBS. I've done Zoom talks in the past. You can always go look at those on the Virtual Connections website for Farm. And other people have done really good OBS introductory talks that you can kind of look at for those things. So there's a couple things I mentioned, but I sort of gloss over the most of it. There are a lot of options for how to do this. So I presented a couple of options, first in order of simplicity, but maybe not the best. And then I go a little deeper into something that's probably maybe a little more complicated, but can achieve better results. And then we kind of go on from there. So I hope
Sorry,
that...
Brandon, I'm going to interrupt you for a quick second. Yeah, I thought it was just me, but your volume could come up a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
You're a little quiet.
Let me fix that. How is this? Is this a little better? Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I guess with that, we'll just kind of get into it. If at any point it is getting, over people's head, just let us know in the chat. I can pause and I can stop and kind of, because this is a video I made earlier today, so I can pause and kind of like dive into something a little deeper. I will have a little segment at the end for a couple little things to go over that are important to know that that I probably should have included in the talk, but I realized it after the fact. And then of course we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So with that, I will just get right into it. As the basics of these two programs in previous tech talks, I will probably not spend too much time on them today. Just kind of gloss over all that stuff. You can always look back at previous talks. So I'm going to break this into two sections. First, I want to address the benefit to a musician by taking the time to learn and utilize OBS, and sort of think of it as like a home base of sorts for all of your live streaming events. And then talk about how a venue or somebody who's running a house concert series can use some of the same methods to both increase the production quality of their live streams and also to give them more control of the entire experience. I've seen that for a musician, there are so many different online series, all with their own rules and preferences on what platforms to use, that it can be a little rough going out of your comfort zone and trying a new online platform only to find that, you can't quite get the same sound that you labored over in the beginning when all this started. If you take the time to get your sound right in OBS, you can standardize how you sound on various platforms with little trouble, as long as you know how to connect OBS to the platform you're performing on, how to get them to like talk to each other. But we'll get to that in a second. I thought it would be valuable to just quickly address one small thing that I'm sure we've covered before in previous tech talks. But one of the best ways to dial in your sound as a musician is to actually live stream to your YouTube page on a private or unlisted page. I wouldn't recommend doing this too much on Facebook. A artist that I know recently shared with me that after she did several Facebook live stream tests in a row, eventually they cut her off and said, "You're doing this too much. You're not allowed to." She wasn't allowed to stream anymore. Luckily, it wasn't the day of the show or anything, so it didn't cause her any issues, but just something to be wary of. If you're doing too many test streams on Facebook, they might shut you down. So it's better to just try it on YouTube. But if you do it on an unlisted or private stream, you don't need to worry about other people seeing it in case there's any mess ups. And if it's unlisted, you can still show a couple of people if you want extra feedback. But that way, once the stream is all done, you're actually seeing it as the fan would see it. Everybody at the end point where the stream is headed. So that's the most realistic way, because you all know that what you're hearing in your monitor isn't necessarily what is going out on the end of the internet. So it's always good to take the time to test, make adjustments, and retest your sound. I've heard plenty of artists sound amazing on an iPhone without an external microphone, just because they took the time to try, get it right, maybe move the camera back a little bit or the phone back a little bit, maybe raise it up a little bit, just trial and error. If you take the time to get it right, it'll be well worth your efforts. That being said, once you have your sound dialed in with OBS, there are a few ways to get it to talk to other platforms. The first thing we're going to mention is the virtual camera. So right here, you see my OBS. In the newer versions of OBS, they released a virtual camera. You can see it right down here. It says mine's already started, so all you have to do is click the Start Virtual Camera button. So then, now that we've done that, we started our virtual camera. Now I can go over to Zoom, and if I look down at Zoom here, I can select my video as OBS virtual camera. And then anything that's in Zoom, in OBS is now your camera source as in Zoom. But the virtual camera is just that. It's just a camera. It does not bring any sound out of OBS into Zoom. To do that, we have a few other options. The first and simplest for most of you is to go to this website, vbaudio.com. All right, and then you'll click on the audio apps section. So this is where you'll land. You click on the audio apps section, and you scroll down and you see VB cable, virtual audio device. What this basically is, it's a pretend virtual cable that you plug from one program in your computer to another program. So basically just routing sound. So you can download that for Windows or you can download it for Mac. It is a free program, which is kind of cool. So this will give you one cable that you can plug from one thing into another thing, which will be fine for most of you. They do have some other options. You can get a and B cable, a C and D cable, and those ones are donation based. So you could still, you could pay $1 for it and still get the download. So this is the simplest thing to get started, but there is a problem with it. The problem is that if you use this method to connect your audio from OBS to Zoom, you lose the ability to monitor, and I'll explain why really quickly. So, all right. So now that we're back in OBS, if we go down to the Settings button in the bottom right-hand side where the controls are, now we can see this settings window. Over here, we have the categories. So if we go into the settings for audio, now we can go to monitoring device. This should probably just be on default when you first start. But if you're trying to use this simplest way to connect Zoom, OBS and Zoom, you just have to select the virtual audio cable. See right here, VB audio virtual cable as the monitoring device. Now, any sound that comes out of OBS is going to be imported into Zoom if you select this virtual audio cable as your microphone in Zoom. The problem with that is because we're using it as a monitoring device, we can no longer actually monitor it and hear it in our headphones, which is not ideal for most people. The reason I've included showing how to do this is because we're going to be using the virtual audio cable for the next section, and this might be fine for some people, but it's probably not ideal for most. There are a few more complicated ways to go about this. For those who are more comfortable and at ease with computers and technology or are willing to learn, my recommendation is NDI. If you go to ndi.tv/tools, you'll find this download. So to explain NDI, NDI is a really interesting newly developed technology that will basically give you a virtual cable for both audio and video that you could run from program to program or even from computer to computer, as long as they are on the same network. So if you've got two computers that are both plugged into Ethernet on the same network, then you can broadcast things instantly from computer to computer, which is pretty cool. Basically, if you go to ndi.tv/tools, you scroll all the way down to the very, very, very bottom. See right here, it's just some explanation of what each of the things that come with it are and stuff that you can do with them. But if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, you'll see this NDI tools for Windows and NDI tools for Mac. So you go ahead and you download those. And what'll happen is if you click download, you'll have to go through this little section here where you'll have to put in your name, fill out all your information, and this important thing, you have to check this box that says opt in for communication. This allows them to send you an email. Then once you hit submit, they will send you an email with a link to download the tools. And then all you have to do is download and install them. Keep in mind an important rule of thumb when downloading any new thing on your computer is you're going to need to reset all of the programs you use, probably. So you'll need to reset. Zoom in order to find these things in it. You need to shut down and reopen OBS similarly. All right, so now that you've downloaded and installed the NDI tools, in order to get NDI to talk to OBS, there's just one more little plugin you need to download for OBS. I'll pop this link right here in the chat, but this OBS NDI plugin. So what you need to do is go down, you click on this link, and then right here under assets, you see all these little cubes. All right, so if you have a Mac, you download the one that says Mac OS .package. If you have Windows, you download the Windows installer.exe. And then once you download that and install it, you'll need to probably restart your computer in order for all of those settings to take place. Now that that is done, in OBS, you go up into this Tools button in the very top corner right here. So if you click on Tools, now you'll see this Ndi Output Settings at the very bottom. And then once you click on that, you should see this box right here. And all you'll have to do is check this main output. And you can name it whatever you want, like OBS out, for example. So your main OBS output settings. And then you click OK. Now you have to tell the computer which NDI source you want to select. All right, so now that you've installed your NDI tools, now you'll see if you have a Mac, you just have to open up, you'll see this little icon right here. I'll zoom in on it, but this little NDI virtual input icon. If you're on a PC, every time that you turn on your computer, you're going to need to restart this, right? So I can right click on it and then I select my source. So here we go. This is the one we just made, right? So this is the name of this PC. And then, so you have to select the device. You could have NDI set up on your phone or another computer, but so this is the computer we're using right here, and we named it OBS out, right? So if I select that, now I can go into Zoom, and now that that's turned on in Zoom, I can select under video New Tech NDI video, and you will see whatever's going on in my Zoom. So it's basically this part of it, this NDI video, is the same thing as the virtual camera, but you also get this and this New Tech NDI audio as a microphone. So with that selected, now any noise that I make in Zoom or any noise I make in OBS, any sound I have programmed there is going to be used instead of a microphone in OBS. So basically, let me get back to, all right, so to go over some basic stuff in OBS that I know has been covered before, just so all the information you generally need is in the same area. The way to make OBS work is you have scenes down here in this bottom left corner. Now, to add a new scene, when you open up, there's going to be a default there. It'll just say scene. You can right click on it and rename it to whatever you want. I think it's important to label things very clearly, especially in OBS. So rename it to, let's call it stage, right? So now I've got my stage scene. So this is when I'm live on stage. And then you have to go into your sources. There will not be, in a new scene, there will not be anything in this source at all. me show you. All right, stage 2. Okay, so see, there's nothing in this source, and because of that, I've got a blank screen up here. So now you need to input your sources. So source can be a microphone, a camera, a movie clip that you're trying to show, or a YouTube clip, an audio track, anything like that, a logo, an overlay, whatever. So you go down here into the sources section and you click this plus button. Now you can add any different type of source you want. But let's start with the basics. First, let's get some video. So go to video capture device. It's important to label things clearly again. So let's say this is USB camera 1 and then hit OK. And now in the next window, you have to select your camera. And then once you select your camera, there's some options here depending on your camera. If you click on this configure video button, you might have some options here to change some the way it looks, some brightness, hue, contrast, stuff like that. If your camera just looks kind of weird, chances are something in one of these settings is a little bit off. You can play around with them a little bit. Then once I've selected that, I hit OK. And then let me get rid of that one. All right, so we've got our camera, and then we have to add a microphone. All right, so we go down into the sources again, hit plus, and now we go to audio input capture. Now here you can put USB mic 1 or whatever, or Focusrite if that's the mixer you're using. And then once you click OK, now you have to select the right device in the device list. So I'll just select my USB microphone right here that I'm using. Click OK. So now everything that I have going on in OBS is being transported out into Zoom. So let's go to Zoom, transform. All right, so in Zoom I have my NDI video selected. Start that. And I've got, you'll see this screen of death. I apologize. Let's go back to this. Here we go. All right, so all of this is coming out of, sorry. I have to do this once every tech talk. All right, so the cool thing about doing it this way, using NDI, is that you don't need to change any of these audio settings. You can leave your monitoring device on your regular headphones. You don't need to set it to anything else. That way you can still hear everything, but Zoom still picks it up. So you can still monitor everything in OBS in the point of origin before you send it out, which is pretty cool. And then another thing that I think is kind of important to say, let me shut off. All right, so now that we've gone through those settings, we have our microphone selected as NDI audio. We have our speaker in Zoom selected as our normal headphones that we're or speaker, whatever we're monitoring on. That way we can still hear other people in Zoom. And then under video, we have our, I don't have it turned on now because you'll get this the screen of infinity that makes everybody nauseous. But if I've got my NDI video turned on, now everything that happens in OBS automatically gets transported to Zoom. All right, so basically that is how you standardize your sound in OBS, because you can do those same set of steps. Not all of, you don't need to redo all of them, obviously, but if you go to Restream instead, all you need to do is select your microphone as NDI output, or if you went the route of the virtual audio cable, you would select that virtual audio cable as your microphone. And then under video, you would just select OBS virtual camera or the NDI video, whichever you have set up. And then you can, everything that happens in OBS is exported out to those other platforms. You have a little more control over it. You can see the levels on the audio mixer, so that is the way to be the most consistent, no matter whose show you're performing on. All right, now that we've done that, anything you put in OBS gets broadcasted automatically to Zoom. The good thing about this too is that it overrides some of Zoom's sound suppression. Not all of it, So this allows you to get a really good sound in OBS and transport it right into Zoom without too much concern. Note though, it is very important that you still need to go into Zoom and do the original sound settings. We've gone over this at many times, but if you go to your audio settings at the bottom and you keep your suppress background noise, you want to switch that to low. You want to shut off automatically adjust microphone volume. You want to go down into the advanced button and you want to leave echo cancellation on auto. Check show in meeting option to enable original sound. That's what turns on this little button up here. See, if I uncheck it, it goes away. I check it, there it is. Now, when original sound is enabled, you want to keep this disable echo cancellation unchecked. Unless you're an artist who likes a lot of reverb, then you might want to play around with that, but you're going to have problems with feedback, chances are, unless you have headphones. Check high fidelity music mode and check use stereo audio. So now that that's done, every time you sign into a new meeting, you'll see this. Up in the top corner, it says turn on original sound. You click it, it's a button, and it'll switch to turn off original sound. Now you're in music mode. You can also click this little triangle button down here and select a microphone to always use with original sound. So say if I select my Rode NT USB microphone, and when I come into the next time let's say I leave that meeting, come into a new one, I have to switch to turn off original sound. When I click this button to switch to music mode, now it'll automatically select the right microphone. So that's a little shortcut for people who might have multiple microphones and sometimes they accidentally use the wrong one. That's a little bit more of a failsafe. But so you still have to use the original sound settings for music in Zoom in order for all of the music in OBS to come through as clearly. So that step is still very important. Now, for those of you filling the role of venue rather than the performer, let's talk about post-production. This is something we could really go really deep into. It could probably be its own several tech talks, but we're just going to kind of glimpse over the possibilities and explain sort of how I use it and how a venue or somebody running their own concert series might use it for small things to increase their production value. I would recommend, if you're using it in this fashion, to get a second monitor. It'll make your life a lot easier. It's possible to do it without it, but even the first second monitor I had was an old $100 TV that I bought 10 years ago that we don't really use anymore. It's a very tiny little TV, but it gets the job done. You can just plug it into your computer with an HDMI cable. If you have a newer Mac, you'll need adapters, but we don't need to get into all that now. So the way to set this up is, for me, I would go into, let's say I'm going to start a new scene. Plus, we'll call this Zoom Capture because I'm capturing what's going on in Zoom. So we're going to go ahead and hit the plus sign here, and we'll do a display capture. You could also do a window capture, but I find that it's not as consistent. Basically, a window will just capture if you have a browser open like Firefox or Safari. It'll only capture that window, but I noticed that when video's involved, the window captures don't always work. So I'll just do a display capture and it'll capture the entire screen of a display. So then let's call this one display 2. And we'll open it up. And now under display, you have to select what display you're using. So we'll use this one right here. Hit OK. Now sometimes my display is a lot bigger than the size of this canvas here, the resolution. So a little trick: if you right click on it, go down. If you ever have any source you put in that is a visual source that's way too big for the screen and doesn't fit on here, you can right click on it, go down to transform, and click fit to screen. Now it automatically resizes so I can see all of it. All right, so in order to turn on your dual display setting in Zoom, You're going to go into your settings. Over on the left-hand side, you see all these categories. If you go to General, you'll see this option that says Use Dual Monitors. If you check that, you'll see another little Zoom window pop up. All right, so now we got to set up dual monitor settings in Zoom. So we'll go down into our little triangle buttons next to the mute microphone, go to audio settings, and now that we're in our general settings window, we see all these categories on the left-hand side. We'll click on general, and then there's this little checkbox that says use dual monitors. If you turn that on, once you check it, a little window will, a second Zoom window will appear with one video in it, and you can control what goes in that video, which is nice because you won't have any of these buttons up top or on the bottom. So I will right click on my video and click add spotlight. All right, so now let's go to my second monitor. Here, let me, yeah, so you can spotlight or you can pin to second screen. Now we'll go to our second screen where I've got my Zoom monitor set up. All right, so here we are. So here's when I checked that dual monitor box, this little window popped up here. So now I can full screen it. And as you can see, I have some down here. You can see a little bit of my computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into OBS. And we're going to resize it a little bit, right? So we can just double click on it. So this red bounding box comes up and you can just click and drag it down a little bit. Drag the sides out a little. And there we go. Now we're only capturing the part of the video we want to capture. Nope, wait, a little bit more. You can also click on it and use the arrow up, down, left, right arrow keys just to move it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now that that's done, now let's talk about overlays. All right, so this is our main scene, which is our Zoom capture right here, right? And all we've got on it is display. Now let's call this, instead of calling it Zoom capture, let's call it main stage shot. Okay. Now what we're going to do, if we want to add some graphic effects, like say you want to add your logo or a lower third with a name on it, for example, what we'll do, we'll get that set up right now. Here. All right, so this may look a little confusing, but what we're going to do now is we're going to set up another scene that we can just double click to change to the next scene, and our logos and everything and our overlays will automatically be there. I already have these windows open because I've just got some other some other graphic elements that I've used for other clients that I'm just going to use today, just for sake of showing you how it can work. So for right now, ignore these top 4 stages right here. Pretend the only one we have is this main stage shot that we just set up, right? So now we're going to create another scene. So let's call it stage with. All right, so we've got our main stage shot. Now we're going to create a new scene. Let's call that main stage with graphics. All right, so now what we want to do is we don't want to add another display capture, because what if we need to change the size of it, right? Then we'd have to change it in 2 places. So one of the best new features in OBS is you can put a scene as a source in another scene. It's called scene nesting. So we're going to go ahead and click this add button under our sources. We'll select a scene, click add existing, right? And it's got a list of all the scenes we've already made. Again, we're going to pretend like I haven't used these other ones. These are just for the purposes of showing you guys things now. But we've got our main stage shot is the one we made. So let's click that. Now you'll see any change that I make to the original scene is automatically going to be changed in here. That way I only need to import something once, and I only need to make changes in one place, and it'll happen everywhere else. So now we need to add our logos over top of it. So the cool thing is now there's two ways to add something into OBS. You can click on this source button, say we want to add an image, which is what we would do if we were adding a logo, right? We'd select our image. We want to create new and select our image. Selected a title, like let's call this logo overlay. Click OK. And then you can click browse and find the file, right? Look it up, search for it up here. The other option, which is why I've got all these windows open, is you can simply drag and drop, right? So let's grab a nice transparent logo, put it right there. See, and it automatically, you'll see it automatically pop up in this top corner. Now I can drag it wherever I want. I can resize it very simply. And there we go. And now also, if I wanted to, let's just keep going. So then let's add a lower third, right? So whose lower third is this that I'm going to put on the screen? Let's just use a website one. Click and drag that too. All right. So now we'll drag that and put that in the bottom corner. Now, see, I've got a overlay shot and a regular shot. So here's the main stage. All I have to do is double click on it, and this is what everybody sees. I guess I should probably and this is what everybody sees. So now if I'm a venue and we're introducing a new artist and I've got their graphics ready to go, now I'll just double click and oh, look, their lower third comes up. My logo's up in the corner. And then once they're done introduction, they're starting to play. Now I just double click on the main stage shot, and that is what everybody else sees instead. So that way you can add a lot of production elements by just a double click. That's why I use my scenes that way, because it allows you to get a lot of control and make many changes all at once. So you're going to have to go into your settings. You can't see.
Ooh,
Hey,
we can't
sorry
hear you.
about
That's
yeah,
okay.
sorry about the rough cuts on some of that video. I finished it all very late last night and early this morning. I have another little clip that explains some things I think I kind of glazed over, but I think it'd probably be best if we just get to the Q&A part, and that way I can make sure we're answering the right questions for you guys. So
Hey, well, yes. So needless to say, a lot of exploding brains out there. This is
yeah,
but and there are some questions for sure, and I've collected them and I promise we'll get to all of them. But as usual, right off the bat, my first question for you is what can you give us some practical, I mean, the obvious when we got to the end, the overlays. You can't do overlays in Zoom.
yep,
Right. So there's like a number one reason why this works. And
yeah,
somebody else has mentioned a couple things like StreamYard, Restream that are out there, those tools. They cost money.
yeah. This is all
OBS
free.
is free. So let me just throw that out there right away to understand why this makes sense. But when it comes, can you say like some other examples of when you've used this in a case where Zoom on its own wouldn't have worked? And
Yeah, I
like
mean,
the benefits of this.
so pretty much anytime somebody wants to have a more like, some people don't care too much about having nice graphics on their stream or things like that. There's also simple ways to add graphics by sharing stuff in Zoom, stuff like that, but you can't do an overlay, for example. But it's really, for example, our mutual friend Don, right? For example, he puts together a pretty like highly produced show. We mostly do it in Zoom, but some of the things he does are putting a video or a picture on the screen at just the right time during the right note of a song, so that it has like, it furthers the emotional pull of the audience. And one of the reasons I started doing it this way is because if you're in the middle of a show and you're kind of like really drawn in and captivated by what's going on, and then in Zoom, if somebody shares a screen, your screen goes black for a second and a big window pops up that says somebody is sharing their screen, and then it takes a second for it to load up, and it's just a little rough. It's not, it sort of like breaks the spell. So mostly you would want to do something like this as far as a venue. If you'd want to put together, it's just increasing the production quality, so you don't have rough interruptions. Everything is smooth. And when you do anything in OBS, there's nice transitions. You can even do custom transitions if you want, so that it's not just choppy, rough cuts, back and forth. Um, for the Greenwich Village Folk Festival, too, we do the lower thirds, which that's not something you can do in Zoom. It's true that you could do that in Restream or StreamYard, but there's also other limits there. Like we couldn't have as many artists as we have on Greenwich Village, for example, in Zoom or Restream all at once. Also, the ease of use for me, because for my end, I'm producing events and adding production elements and stuff. I find that things just work a lot smoother and easier with OBS because you can customize things. Plus, I don't want to have a subscription to every single service on the earth, because that stuff gets pretty expensive. So for me personally, for my purposes, OBS makes a lot of sense, especially if you can add. I know that there's limits on Restream and StreamYard to what you can. The limit. I think there's a limit on how much video you can import. It can only be a certain size, it can only be a certain quality, and I think it can only be a certain duration. Whereas there's zero limits on anything you do in OBS. I've streamed entire pre-recorded concerts on OBS out to Facebook, other platforms, or even from OBS into Zoom for a live watch party, and then out to Facebook and YouTube. So there's just a lot more options, and free doesn't hurt. I like free. So
Yeah. I like free. And as I'm going to direct people to our tech talk from last week, if you missed it, Jim Henry is talking about hotkeys. You're talking about double clicking, which is great if you're behind the scenes and you're just somebody who's, doing it. But if you want to quick, you can also assign hotkeys to that, right? Like
yeah,
all those actions you're
hotkeys
talking
are
about.
great. They're a
Yeah.
little. It's for some people. It's not for others. I like hotkeys for certain things, but it's like learning another language. Plus, if you have your hotkeys set up on a keyboard that you are also going to be using to typing, you might accidentally trigger a scene.
Yeah.
So some people also will have a separate keyboard they use just for hotkeys.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
Cool. All right, so we're gonna go to the questions. The first one that came in was, is VB cable an alternative to Audio Hijack on Mac? Are you familiar with Audio Hijack?
I haven't used Audio Hijack, but I'm guessing. I think it's actually. I think it might be made by the same company. One of my favorite things I use on Mac for my Mac computer is actually Loopback,
Yeah.
which Audio Hijack I haven't used it, but I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. Loopback is great. I didn't want to talk about it today because it's expensive. It's I think $100 for a year subscription or something, which maybe isn't that bad. I use it because it's very valuable because I can have any audio source I want and just plug it into I can group all of them together into one virtual audio cable and have that go into Zoom, and that's very simple. But I didn't want to make today's talk about something people had to pay for. So
Yeah, no, I get it. And then I think, yeah, Ethan's talking about it, and somebody did bring it up as a question. So that answers that question. And I have heard about Loopback, but that is something that's like a virtual cable that you would still use OBS, right? You would connect
yeah,
Loopback to OBS,
yeah, I'm,
right?
I'm guessing Audio Hijack works more like Loopback, where um, you just have to open the program and you can tell it what to capture and where to send it.
Hmm.
So that would be something you could definitely use as well. I don't have any experience with that one personally, though.
Yeah. Here's a good, okay. So, and I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but OBS is not something you can connect. Somebody's asking, is OBS viable with StreamYard yet?
I
And
believe it is. I believe you can. I personally don't use StreamYard. It's the only subscription service that I don't pay for every month, just simply because I've never had a need to use it. None of my clients have ever, um, required it to be something we normally use, Zoom or Restream or OBS. But so I believe it works. I know it works on Restream because I've tried it and made sure that it works. But I think that StreamYard can, and if they can't, I'm sure they will be able to soon because there's a lot of, all these programs are updating weekly. So
yeah.
it should be something they get to soon.
Okay, so will that I guess to the question being from my side out of that, I use Restream personally, and we've done it where we take the stream key like I'm doing now. I'm using
Yeah.
Restream to stream out to Facebook
Yeah.
directly from Zoom. I've done it where I've taken the stream key out of Restream and put it into OBS and streamed out.
Yep. Yeah.
There's
So
never a point where you're going to do Restream, OBS, and Zoom.
yeah. So, for example, if I've got like two musicians or a handful of musicians in Zoom,
Mhm.
and I'm adding production elements to it, maybe I'm adding video or overlays like we talked about. Then I've got Zoom going into OBS in the ways that I showed you. And then if
Mm,
I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube, I will stream from OBS to Restream. That way it can get to all the other destinations. And I'm streaming it from OBS because if I stream it from Zoom, none of that stuff I'm adding in OBS matters. Nobody can see it. So it would have to be streamed. If you're doing the post production stuff, it would have to be streamed from OBS out there.
right.
So I
Is it
actually frequently use all three.
okay? So but not like Restream Studio
Yeah,
is a
I don't.
different piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it like that. If I'm using Restream Studio, and I don't very often. I've only done it a few times. I could still connect OBS to Restream Studio so that I could add whatever I wanted. I wouldn't need to download video into Restream. It's already on my computer in OBS, and OBS can send it.
Yeah.
So that would make things a little easier for you if you're familiar with OBS. But I would just be streaming from Restream at that point. Restream Studio is a little bit different.
And your performers, whoever you're running a show for, are only logging into Zoom and
Yeah.
sending their audio to you, and then
Yep.
you're doing everything. Right. Okay. Cool.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why the reason I use Zoom mostly is because it's easiest for everybody to use and figure out how to get on and,
Yeah.
get everybody in one space, and it's easy to control everything.
Right. Um, does the high fidelity music mode use more bandwidth?
Yes, it absolutely does. I think that's something we talked about in the last talk. But if you
Mhm.
don't have a great internet connection, putting on that high fidelity music mode is not going to improve your situation. Again, Ethernet, 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 Ethernet. You have no business going on the internet and streaming anything if you're not plugged into Ethernet. So
Yeah.
high fidelity music mode will cause problems if your internet is already a little shoddy.
Yeah. Um, I have noticed recently with new versions of Zoom that turning on and off original sound has made very little difference. That the sound quality was surprisingly good, and then I found out that the person did not have original sound turned on. And I mean,
Yes.
I think they're getting better and better. Are you noticing that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think
Yeah.
mostly it's that the adjustments to the background noise, like
Mhm.
the suppression where you set it to low. If you've got it to low, even if you don't have all the other stuff turned on, the sound is going to be much better than you're used to with Zoom right out of the gate. A couple months ago, they're definitely improving, and they're going to keep improving. Actually, Don and I have been joking about, not so much joking, about me and him are going to contact Zoom and write a letter to them and tell them about all the things that they need so that they don't lose all of the people who are using it for music when somebody else makes it. Um, I think they're definitely improving things, and honestly, they update the app like every other week.
Yeah.
Um, it's important to stay up to date on it, I'd say.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. In fact, that is something that we were going to make sure to tell everybody with our email confirmation, but we didn't get it in there soon enough. But if you don't know how to update Zoom, just Google how to update your Zoom account, your Zoom app, and you will find a link in there. And I would encourage everybody to get updated because they add cool features too. Like
Yep.
I could put a mustache on myself right now.
Yeah.
I
They're
think that would be
on
fun.
that note, they're probably going to be adding their own overlay thing soon.
Sure.
Like that's pretty much what they're doing already, but they don't let you to do custom ones. So they'll probably be adding some kind of functionality like that eventually. The only
Mhm.
thing that I think the problem is I could add an overlay on mine, like you said, you could put a mustache on you, but
Mm,
I wouldn't have control over doing it for you.
right.
So it wouldn't work quite the same way as we're talking about today for this
Yes,
discussion.
but I don't want you to be able to put a mustache on me.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, back to questions. So Daniel's asking, sharing video directly in Zoom is very glitchy. Is
Yes.
sharing video to Zoom via OBS more reliable? Great
Absolutely, and
question.
that's why I do it. So I actually do a lot of broadcasts where we're showing full length movies in Zoom to a live audience, and the reason I started using OBS instead was because you can control the frame rate, and the mechanics for how you share in Zoom. Obviously, it's not the same. The video's glitchy, it drops frames, but you have a lot of control in OBS, so you could even on your streams you could control if you're streaming just to Facebook. There's settings you could stream specifically to Facebook by changing the frame rate, the frame interval. So you have a lot of control. So if you're showing a video that needs to be good quality in Zoom, I would highly recommend doing it this way and showing it through OBS with a virtual camera and whatever means you find to get the audio over.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Big quality difference.
Yep. If you are using OBS for a Zoom concert, you are hosting solo. Oh, if you're doing a solo Zoom concert, how do you keep up with the live chat while also controlling your OBS interface?
Okay, so a cool thing there. So again, this is the beginning of a new tech talk, but we'll talk about it briefly. If you use Restream, for example, you can actually, if you connect OBS to Restream, all these little windows will pop up in OBS that you can move around or delete or get rid of, but you can see an integrated chat from Restream right in your OBS, and it can have I've used it in the past and it was a little glitchy. I think they're working it out now. It's a little bit better. I've heard the OBS plugin works really good. So if you connect your Restream account to your OBS, you'll automatically get a big chat window that pops up. And while you're live streaming, all the messages from Facebook, from Zoom, wherever, or YouTube, wherever else you're streaming, will get sent to this one chat box, and you can send a message to all of them in one spot. You can say "Hey" to everybody and hit enter, and it'll go out to everybody. So OBS and there's thousands of OBS plugins that will make things like this way easier. You can customize OBS infinitely. So that's something I would definitely recommend looking into if you're doing your own show and you don't have somebody who's running tech. You can manage the chat rooms and everything all in one spot.
Yeah. I know Restream is sort of outside of the scope, but we keep bringing it up. And I think that's because a lot of people are using either StreamYard or Restream, sort of, one or the other in this way. And am I right that Restream does not really do they have a free account? A free
They
version?
do, yeah.
They do have a free
Restream
version.
has a free account. The difference between the two is silly. The free account is probably good for most people. The only thing that you get by paying for I think the first price is $20 a month, I think, or something like that.
19.
But just so you know, you can almost always sign. There's every month they have a 30% off for life thing, and that's when I sign up for stuff.
Yeah.
But the only thing you gain by paying for the bottom tier of Restream is that you can stream to a Facebook page. Like if you have a business page or your fan page, the free account, you can still stream to your personal page. Like I have several clients who don't have a fan page. They only use their personal Facebook page. So you could use the free account for that, and you can stream to 30 plus places with the free account of Restream, just not a Facebook page.
Does that come with Restream Studio?
Yeah, Restream Studio comes with the second tiered version.
Okay.
Or with the first paid version, and then once you pay for it at all, they let you can stream to pretty much anywhere. Yeah. And you can stream to 30 plus places. So yeah.
But all that stuff you talked about in terms of connecting, getting the chat in to OBS, can you do that with the free
the chat
account?
I'd have to look into that. I could find you an answer. I could get back to that in a minute. I think it's allowed on the free account, but I'm not certain. I can look real quick.
Okay.
While we get to the next one.
Okay. While we get to the next one. Louise is asking, does the stereo selection work without using OBS?
Yes, it should. Are you talking about, I'm assuming you're talking about in Zoom, the use stereo audio thing? I'm assuming that's what she means.
I don't see you, yeah. I don't see any hands raised, by the way, so I'm just using the chat right now.
But so the use stereo audio thing is finicky on Zoom depending on your personal computer settings.
Yeah, she's saying yes.
Okay, yeah. I've had a lot of people that I've worked with on their sound that, for some reason, even though we just went through and downloaded the newest Zoom, and use stereo audio isn't an option for them. And I'm not sure. I don't really know what it is. I think it's a permission thing in their computer. Zoom's not allowed to make that kind of a change. But that shouldn't make any putting OBS into the play doesn't make a difference there. That's a weird, quirky little Zoom thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I have a question. One of my quirks with Zoom, and the reason I like Restream Studio and probably people like StreamYard, is that when you are broadcasting out to Facebook, like we are right now on this, when I'm talking, my face is going to pop up on that screen. When you're talking, your face is going to pop up. Most people maybe in this thing can now see both of us side by side having this conversation. Can you emulate this in OBS with what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of just like what I showed you guys where we had a display capture, instead of just putting up the dual monitor option in Zoom where I'm only looking at one video, instead I could just take my Zoom window and put it on that display, and I could pin your video and my video, and then I've got a split screen that I'm broadcasting out. So
Okay.
you can, the possibilities are really limitless with OBS and what you can do with it.
Wow.
So yeah, that's actually the annoying thing. When they first added this multiple spotlight thing in Zoom, I got so excited. It was in the middle of a Don concert. I think you were actually playing. I think you were playing with him that night. But I got really excited in the middle of the show. I spotlighted two artists so they could talk back and forth, and it looked great in Zoom. And I was really excited. I was like, oh, this makes my life so much easier. But then I noticed on Facebook that a fan sneezed, and then the screen on Facebook cut to them. Nobody else saw it in Zoom, but everybody on all the streams, they saw the extra person, because for some reason when you spotlight more than one person on Zoom, they haven't quite got the audio thing right. So if anybody else makes a noise, it'll cut to them too.
Right.
So.
And again, I'm going to just harken back to the benefits of the Zoom thing in the first place, right? And the reason that we like Zoom over a StreamYard or a Restream is this audience factor.
Yeah.
Right. That's the X factor, that you've got the audience in the room. Whereas when you're using StreamYard or Restream, you've just got the performers here, and then you're, which is still, there's a lot of benefits to it. So I'm not knocking any of that. It's just your personal choices.
It just depends on the type of show you want to put on.
Exactly. So I think I've gotten all the questions. Sue Fink did share something called On Zoom that includes ticketing.
Yes.
And
I wish I could give you guys some info about that. I have so this recently came out. Basically, what it seems to me is basically just a calendar of events for Zoom, where you can search on Zoom and find all these different classes. You can charge tickets for admission. I have personally submitted to become a host on Zoom for a few of my clients, and I have not been able to even get an answer from anybody at Zoom about it. It's a new thing they just rolled out. I'm sure they're working on a lot of kinks.
Okay.
But I've put in some requests, and I have no information for you yet. Hopefully the next time we talk, I can give you some answers on that one.
Yeah. I think I missed an early on question. The virtual camera in OBS, I'm running the version release prior to late April. Version
the OBS, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's OBS.
Yeah.
Read the virtual. I mean, does that have the visual?
No,
Excuse me, virtual camera.
I don't think so. So we're on OBS Studio 26.0.2 or something. The 26 is the one where they installed the virtual camera, and I think 26.1 was just on PC, and the newest version they have it on Mac as well. So in order to get that virtual camera, you need to make sure you're updated to a newer version than the 25th edition.
Yeah. And while we can all agree that there are times, Brandon, when you shouldn't just automatically update something,
Yes.
Like your operating system. No,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's safe to say that Zoom, OBS, like these kinds of softwares that you're downloading, they're always adding security features and upgrades that it's a good idea to check
It's
for
not a bad
updates.
idea to be cautious about
Yeah.
updating.
Mhm.
You know, we don't need to get too into it, but I myself
Mhm.
had a big snafu with it recently that
Sorry.
caused me a lot of problems. But yeah, I've never had a application update really cause me problems.
Yeah.
There's also ways if you upgraded to a new Zoom and you didn't like a feature, you can also find older versions and download them and go back to it without a problem.
Sure.
I'd always be cautious about upgrading your actual computer software because that's bit me in the ass many times.
Nice. All right. Sorry, plus even if you have Windows 10, it's downloading OBS for Windows 7 Plus, even if you have Windows 10, is that okay for older? Yeah, the older computer compatibility, all that kind of stuff is, I don't know how much we can address
Yeah, I
that.
mean, you can check. I know on the OBS website, which is obsproject.com. If you look under, there's like a version section, and they'll tell you minimum requirements. If you've got a PC, it tells you what operating system you need to have to run the newest versions, and the same for Mac.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best place to find those details. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, and
And
to get back to that other question about the chat, I can't really find an answer.
mm,
I think it's included in the free version. I could be wrong. It might only be on the paid version.
yeah.
So because I
Okay.
have the paid version, it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So I just so you know, you guys, Brandon and I spoke before, because this is our last tech talk of the year, and this is a really weighty subject, and it sounds like there's even more that Brandon was going to cover that he hasn't, and we're not sure yet. We recognize that these are supposed to generally stick to about an hour, but um, if you got to go and you want to go ahead. But I feel like there's some great information that we're going to keep recording. And as long as Brandon's willing to stick it with us, we've got a couple more questions, and then maybe we'll
yeah.
revisit what you were going to share with us. Um, so there's one question that should be very quick. Early on, you said something about reset,
Oh,
and we
that was
assume you meant
poor.
restart.
Yeah, that was poor. That was very poor wording. That was very poor wording. Yes. So by reset, I just meant closing the program down completely, like shutting Zoom and OBS down completely, and then reopening it back up. That's usually enough for if you put a plugin or if you do download anything that affects a program, you're going to need to close that program down and reopen it.
Right.
Sometimes you might also need to restart your computer. Sorry for the poor wording choice there. I heard it. And I knew it was going to be a problem. So sorry about that.
That's all right. I threw it in there. Ian Gorman. Hello, Ian. Nice to see that you're here. Instead of trying to send an OBS feed through Zoom, we're trying to do something the other way, trying to broadcast a Zoom meeting over OBS, but with
Yep.
an additional higher quality audio feed coming through a URL playing. Oh my God, through a browser window. Is this something we can do with OBS? Main tech question is if we can combine Zoom audio and the audio stream coming through a web browser at the same time.
All right. This is something you can achieve. It's, I believe, I have, goes back to something me and Annie have talked about playing around with, but there are ways to get people into your OBS directly by following a link. I don't think that's exactly what you mean, but I think it's close enough to the mark that it'll work for this conversation. There's a plugin for OBS you can get called OBS Ninja, and you can send somebody a link, and they click on the link, and their audio and video is automatically imported directly into OBS. You can also do a web browser source. I think for the purpose of this, they both work roughly the same. But as far as matching it with Zoom audio, that would be tough. It would depend on the nature of the audio. Like, so if you have one artist in Zoom and they're also sending you audio through a web link, if it's that controlled and it's just one audio signal, I think it would be pretty easy to probably add a delay or something onto one of them so that they would sync up. You'd have to play around with it a lot, and my concern with it would be is that if the person wasn't plugged into Ethernet or didn't have a very consistent connection, that delay might not always be the same. So it might fluctuate. If their internet drops a little bit, it might get a little behind. I think it's something that's entirely possible. I think that I would need to know why you're trying to do it. I think there might be better ways to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's the most I can really say about it.
All right. Well, and what we're going to do is we're going to put Brandon's email in here. Ian, you two should know each other anyway. Um, and Ian, you're on my list, so just so you know that. Okay, we'll put Brandon. Brandon, will you enter your email in that while
Yeah,
I'm in the chat while I'm typing? He's got a new
absolutely.
email address, guys. Just when I got your other one memorized, and I'm still going to use it too. Speaking of audio, so because the Zoom audio is getting better, this is less of a concern. But is there a benefit in terms of audio for using OBS, or is there any effect on the audio at all in OBS, or is it just more like you can monitor your signal, obviously, but when you're running shows, like it's
So
still dependent on what the person who's feeding you that audio, there's nothing you
yeah,
can,
yeah.
right?
So if I'm grabbing audio from Zoom, for example, the audio is limited by what I'm getting from Zoom.
Mhm.
If I were to connect you right to my OBS, in theory it should be better audio quality. But I'm sure that much more things could go wrong with it. And again, it's something I haven't tested a lot. But you have a lot of options with controlling audio and video in OBS. Like for example, for Greenwich Village Folk Festival, I do post production stuff there. Everybody's in a Zoom. I add elements in OBS. Um, Sometimes we have an artist that we get through the sound check, they're great, and then all of a sudden their microphone's really quiet. I can boost their audio 10, 20, 30 decibels. I can control it however I want. If somebody's a little bit too loud, I could turn it down. Obviously, that's not ideal because if they're too loud, they're peaking, and turning down doesn't really fix that. Um, you can also add effects to your audio. You could add reverb. You could add whatever. You could if somebody's camera looks awful, you could play around with the lighting and the coloring of it and dial it in. So you have a lot more control than people realize with OBS.
Nice. That sounds like an advanced class.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of advanced class topics, I think,
I know
tonight.
already.
Yeah.
Can I ask now? You said that you had another step of this,
Well,
another video, short video. Can you?
the only thing was I realized that there were points through the video where I should have maybe showed you how to stream from OBS, but that might be something covered in the basics videos
Yeah.
that were done
Hmm.
before.
For
And
sure.
then the other thing was I wanted to go through and show you how to just change some settings that allow you to just double click to change scenes. It's just a checkbox in the settings. That's it. That's all the video was. Just those two little things that I felt like would have been valuable in the right place of the video that I did before, but I forgot about.
Oh,
So
gotcha. Well, maybe we can put that video up on our website as a companion piece with this, or share a link to
yeah,
the video. Would that
yeah,
make
yeah. We can
sense?
we can do that.
Rather
Yeah,
than keep you a whole lot longer, because
yeah, yeah. We can do
um
that.
I feel like I think I got to everyone's question. Folks, this was probably the most on top of it I think I have possibly been. I don't know why that
Good work,
is.
Annie.
I did yoga for this morning. It's like, what's that? My body doesn't know what to do with that. Um, but if you have any other questions, last minute questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat real quick. I would like to once again thank all of you for being here with us, but especially Brandon today. He is staying on top of this stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there doing it, but he's the one I know. He's
Well,
my
thank you.
go-to guy, and you're so good at helping us, and we so appreciate it very, very much. Brandon did put his email in here in the chat, and I know he is open to people pestering him, which God
Yep.
knows why. Um, it's going to be starting to, no, I'm kidding. Pester him all you want. And likewise, conference@farmfolk.org. If you have any questions for me, please stay in touch with us. Let us know what else you would like us to present in terms of tech talks. We've got a great house tonight. So all of you, we've got another year of this coming up, folks. We're not shutting down anytime soon in terms of sharing information with you guys. So we want to know what you want to know. I'm tapped out. So at least for now.
I got nothing.
Every time Brandon says, "Hey, I just found this thing." Okay, you're coming back. We've got home recording that we're talking about bringing in. As a lot of people are going to be staying home instead of going into recording studios. So I think that's going to be a great one. But thank you again, everybody. We're going to switch to gallery view right now. And you're all going to wave to people in Facebook land. If you want to show your face, great. If you want to hide your face, now's the time to do it. I hope you'll join us at our community peer sessions. We've got a couple of them left. We have also just added a New Year's Eve community sing / song circle / however the heck we're going to manage to jam. We're going to host that. Charlie Mossbrook, our illustrious farm board president, is going to be hosting that evening. So those of you looking for something to do, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central for a few hours on New Year's Eve, go check that out. We'll be putting more information on the website. Keep in mind that our other regions, NERFA and SURFA, at least that we know of, and the Folk Alliance International, are all presenting some great programming. So please check out their offerings as well. We are closing up this educational portion for the year, and we'll see you again on that side, on the other side. But we wish you all the absolute best. And I hate saying goodbye, so this is the part I really, really hate, when I click the end. I see a lot of lovely new faces. It's great to see you guys. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks again, Brandon. You're the best.
Take care, everybody.
Everybody say bye.